This is TWiT.
It's kerfuffle time. As far as kerfuffles go, the Signal and Facebook ad kerfuffle is a fascinating one. I rate kerfuffles in my spare time, so this is right up there. A lot to learn from. I don't even know what kerfuffle actually means. I should probably look up the definition. There's a lot to learn from this, so we brought in Alex Kantrowitz from the Big Technology Podcast to help us break it down. Welcome back to the show, Alex.
Great to be back. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's always my pleasure and our pleasure to have you on the network. Thank you. So first of all, I came across your Twitter thread, so I could tell you were charged up about this, and we'll talk all about it. But start by explaining a little bit what Signal did exactly here. What kind of ads were they seeking to run? I think it was on Instagram. It wasn't on Facebook, right? It was on Instagram.
Yeah. So Signal basically wanted to run these ads that pointed out what Facebook's targeting looked like to you. So they would be like, you're getting this ad because, you know, you're a GP with a master's in history and you're divorced and you're in London. And they wanted to make a bunch of different type of ads that were going to tell people exactly how Facebook is targeting them to basically say, if you don't like the fact that you're using a service that targets you this way, maybe try Signal. And so that's sort of what the ads look like. They're actually great ads.
Yeah, I got to say, they're kind of brilliant. Like, I'm surprised to have not seen an ad like this before because, I mean, I don't work in the ad industry, so I don't know firsthand what it takes to set something like this up. But I have to imagine on the ad campaign side of things, when you're creating something, you are receiving kind of this the benefits of the data that the network is collecting on people. And apparently you have access to some sort of that fire hose in order to basically reflect that back to the user. Like, I guess I didn't realize that was the case. I would have expected that Signal would have access to the ability to target, but not necessarily know that kind of granular detail about someone. Are they actual ads or were they mock-ups? Do you know that?
Well, that's the big question. Because Signal says that it tried to run the ads, and Facebook said that they never actually set them to run. So that's where their debate is basically taking place. Signal's like, does this whole big blog post, and the ads are so great that, you know, it's like one of those rejected Super Bowl ads. Sometimes you get more attention for the stuff that doesn't make it in than the stuff that actually does. And brands will create ads they know are going to get rejected from the Super Bowl because there's going to be more publicity around it than if they actually make it into the game. And they don't have to spend the $4 million. And so that's sort of what it seems like with Signal in this case. Signal said they tried to run the ads, but they put evidence up, but it didn't exactly show what they were trying to get across.
Yeah, and I've also seen some mentions of these screenshots being from a date. I think they're like early March or something.
In March, yeah, the screenshot that Signal's using to prove that its ads were rejected is from March. Well, last time I checked, we're in May. So, if and also the screenshot doesn't show any ads rejected. So I don't know. I mean, did they wait a month and a half to put this blog post up? That seems unlikely. Did they show an outdated screenshot? Maybe, but why not just show the screenshot that actually has the rejected ads? I have an idea why they might not have done it. It probably was a stunt. So
yeah, I mean, it kind of feels like, yeah, I think your comparison to like the Super Bowl ads and, sometimes getting more attention because they aren't run is, I think, perfectly apt. At the same time, I completely appreciate the kind of exercise here. The reason for the ad, what Signal is doing here, calls to light something very important that, it's a great visualization about the type of detailed granular information that can be gleaned about a particular user by using these social networks in the ways that we do. And so, like, on one hand, it feels like a stunt and like, okay, well, yeah, I guess I'm not surprised that Facebook would, shut this down. On the other hand, I kind of want to see it go because it's kind of brilliant.
Yeah, no, I think the ads are great. If Signal is pretty adamant that it tried to run them, but we haven't seen the proof yet. And Facebook even says that it would allow some of these to run, but Signal's account was down because of a payment issue in March. So
wow.
what I would really like to see is some of these ads actually show up on Facebook, getting targeted in the way that Signal says they can be targeted. That would be cool. I think seeing the message is one thing. I think it's nice. But if there's a chance that Signal is kind of like just doing this as, a stunt and flubbing the truth a little bit so it can get these ads in front of more people, that doesn't make me feel great about them. Like they don't, you don't really need to stretch the truth in this situation to show how creepy Facebook advertising can be. But that said, look, we're talking about it here. People have been talking about it all week. I know the story because, this tweet storm that I did that wasn't even started as a tweet storm, but like both companies start sending me messages. It's been picked up in, across the world. It's showing up in India and elsewhere. So people are definitely paying attention. So obviously a win for Signal on the marketing front. I still have some questions about the integrity of the campaign, but it doesn't seem like they care very much.
Yeah, right. Now, is there anything, any indication in Facebook's or Instagram's kind of terms for, the people who would advertise on their network, preventing someone like Signal from doing exactly this? Or is this some sort of a loophole that Facebook immediately recognized, like, oh, wait a minute, it can be used like that? We didn't realize it. I'd be surprised if that was the case. But do they explicitly prohibit this sort of surfacing of that information?
Parts of it. I mean, they do show lots of different details in these ads. So Facebook says stuff like a medical condition, for instance, wouldn't be allowed. So if you have that in there, then potentially, it would have to ban the ads. But actually, Facebook says some of the ads would get through if Signal did try to run them. Assuming we take Facebook at its word, which is always a risky proposition. There had been some discussion that like, you can't have an ad that's all filled with text. But that rule apparently has gone away. So a text-heavy ad is A-OK. And, it's just a question of like what they're actually surfacing in terms of the targeting criteria. But long story short, some of these ads are fine. So I think Signal should give it another shot. Maybe pay their bill.
Yeah, agreed. Is there anything particularly dangerous about some of this information? Like when I see an ad that's surfacing this, like, I guess it's reflecting back to me my own personally identifiable information. Well, I mean, it's not specific to my name if I were seeing these ads, but it's seemingly giving me a lot of personal information about myself, let's say. Is there anything dangerous about that being reflected in an ad such as this?
Yeah, I would say for the vast majority of people, nearly everyone, there isn't a real risk in having all this information available about you online through the online advertising systems. A lot of time people have this like main character complex, right? Where they're like, oh, Facebook knows that I have a master's like this. It doesn't really matter in the scheme of things. But there are lots of cases in the advertising world where there is too much data available on people. One of the cases that I've been interested in is I think U.S. Special Ops have had their locations exposed because of ad data or device data that's gone tracked and become available in the ad exchanges. And it's like, you could do everything you want, but if you carry your phone and you open up Facebook or you open up, some other website, then all of a sudden your location's exposed and your operation is compromised. So, I think there are definitely a handful of different places where it could actually put people's safety at risk. I wouldn't say, most cases, but there are those cases. But, overall, I think we all feel, kind of queasy about the fact that advertising has been able to target us this granularly. And I think it's fairly unnecessary. Like, advertising for a long time has been done on reach and frequency, and advertisers are quite happy about that. And even, people talking about the Apple cookie, the Apple, forcing people to opt into tracking when they're using Facebook. Advertisers are like, fine, I'll just find another way to advertise without all this, creepy tracking. And it's like, come on, guys, you could have done this the whole time. And now you're only doing it because Apple is forcing the issue. So advertising adjusts. I think that we're in an era where they've collected all the data just because they can. But I do hope we get out of it at some point because it's unnecessary.
Yeah, indeed. Now, finally, I did notice on your Twitter thread after Facebook and Signal representatives were going back and forth, you posed the opportunity to both of them to come on your podcast and talk about it. Have they taken you up on that by chance, or is that something you want to talk about?
That's right. Well, look, one of the things I do on my show is I try to have people with differing opinions come together and duke it out. It's amazing. On Twitter, we just go back and forth and yell at each other without any context, and it's a performative dunk fest. And I'm like, well, what if we actually, saw each other face to face? So we've had like Kevin Roos from the New York Times debate Mark Ledwich, who's a software engineer, who basically said his reporting on YouTube radicalization was BS. And instead of vitriol on Twitter, they talked it out. And I think they got to a good resolution. So the offer's open to Facebook and Signal. I heard back from one of the parties that they would consider it. I'm not too optimistic because I think the tenor of our conversations, of our discourse today are largely, pretty vitriolic, and people seem to revel in the fighting. But I will press the issue, and I do hope that we can get both of those companies on to talk about their businesses and talk about what differentiates them. They both have good arguments, and maybe I'm too idealistic, but I think a world where we can start talking to each other versus yelling at each other is something we should aspire to. And I'll keep pressing for that.
Absolutely agree. And I appreciate that you do.